Coming up on today's Cowboys Report, we'll break down the Deuce Vaughn at wide receiver, interest buzz, what's going on there, some kick return updates, who else beyond KaVontae Turpin could be involved there, and a Dak Prescott contract update from ESPN. First, some sad news. We lost the sub battle against the Giants. I don't really know what happened here. We were up by like 6 or 7, and then Giants had 2 big videos in a row, and they caught us and beat us. So we're starting fresh in the month of June, knowing it's always a little bit delayed on the actual accounting from an analytics perspective. That's why it's 0-0. Hit that sub button right now for more free Cowboys videos. Let's make sure we beat the Giants this month. Let's talk Deuce Vaughn, getting some slot receiver work for the Cowboys at OTAs. That had been mentioned by Todd Archer, and then Deuce Vaughn kind of discussed it as well, saying, quote, "It was one of those things we had kind of talked about at the end of the last season, last year, talking with Shoddy, just a little bit about getting with that slot, getting with a Brandon Cooks, getting with a guy that plays out there, and just learning a little bit more about it. It's one of the things I did in college and love to do. Just adds another value. Getting into this OTA season, it's perfect to go out here and learn with these guys and be on the field with Dak. Understand what he's thinking, understand what meaning Cooper Rush, is thinking, understanding what those guys are doing." Now, do you remember the play Tony Pollard at slot receiver buzz? And similar, but kind of different to an extent of, you're going to play Pollard and Zeke on the field at the same time together, buzz? Remember that from previous camps, etc., when Kellen Moore was here? Yeah, it's all the same thing. Or at least it's pretty similar to me in terms of how I view this with Deuce Vaughn. Cross-training is valuable. Cross-training is logical. Cross-training does add value, as Deuce Vaughn said. Look, your third down back, in most cases, needs to be a pass catcher. You need to have the ability to flex out wide, catch passes, not just to be like an actual slot receiver, but contribute when you're shifted out wide. Contribute as a pass catcher, even on screens, and training as a receiver will make things easier for you as a pass catcher. So I have no complaints about this, and given the archetypes of what you have at wide receiver or in the backfield, Deuce Vaughn's kind of the one who fits that mold of like, yeah, let's give him some slot receiver reps, get him to be a better pass catcher and route runner if and when he's called upon to do that. Now, there's also, of course, the kick return angle that could help add value for Deuce Vaughn. That's coming at the end of today's show, by the way. But first, will Deuce Vaughn make the roster for the Cowboys in 2024? There's no guarantee. Y for yes, N for no. Do you believe our small king will make the roster? It's the pinned comment on today's video. That ad comes on YouTube. Just ignore it. Go vote Y or N. I do think Deuce Vaughn has a chance, and maybe even a pretty good chance, to make the roster. Again, we'll come back to the kick return stuff here. But he's not a lock to make it. I think your one real lock is Ezekiel Elliott. I think I'd be surprised if Rico Dowdle didn't make the roster, and frankly, I think he should be RB1, but his contract is less than what Ezekiel Elliott is making. So then it's Deuce Vaughn, Royce Freeman, Malik Davis, Hunter Lipke makes it probably as a fullback. Do they add somebody else to the 53-man or the 90-man roster? Snoop Connor's out there. Nate Peets, we'll see if he ends up doing anything at all. So there are options, but maybe not the best options. Now, more from Deuce Vaughn on playing slot receiver, and I do like this part too. When I went upstairs and started watching, not film, a guy I watched was Cole Beasley. Not a big guy in prowess, but I mean, understood his IQ of the game, seeing coverages, being able to sit down in zones, be able to understand how to beat leverage is unreal. I watched him this offseason, and that's one of the guys I've watched a whole bunch. Now, I think that's a pretty good route runner to watch in terms of someone who maximized a smaller frame and had a successful NFL career. I think that's a logical player Deuce Vaughn should try to model his game on when it comes to route running. Also might suggest some Lance Dunbar, potentially. Now, Dunbar was probably a bit faster than Deuce Vaughn was, but kind of there was a point where when Lance Dunbar came on the field, it was only a pass, which was maybe too much of a tell back in the Romo era days, but I digress. Again, there is the potential kick return value that helps Deuce Vaughn. Kind of sounds like he's the number 2 for at least the time being. We will come back to that here later on in today's show. But the Fanatics draft hats are still available for the 2024 NFL Draft. The official draft hat worn by a bunch of different Cowboys players. I would advise checking them out on the website, chatsports.com/Cowboys draft hat. Just because you kind of see the 3D effect. I think you want to be able to zoom in, and I can't really do that on YouTube unless you're, I don't know, watching on TV as so many people are these days. So check out the comments section and the description of today's show. It's chatsports.com/Cowboys Draft Hat. Take a look at the official NFL Draft Hat this year. Okay, here we go again. Jeremy Fowler claims that the Cowboys are all in on signing Dak Prescott before he hits free agency. Here's the report from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. The Cowboys are all in on re-signing Dak Prescott eventually. They just haven't shown it yet. I'm told behind the scenes they made clear that they don't want him to hit free agency in 2025. They want him to be the quarterback of the future, but negotiations have been described to me as passive. Sometime this summer, they're going to have to ramp up the heat a little bit, come with a strong offer, get the ball going, but they made it clear that they're going to do that. They're just slow playing it a little bit. So first off, please stop using all in. This is not what that term means. You cannot sit there and say, hey, we are all in on this hand and say, well, we just haven't bet yet. No, it's not how it works. It's not what all in means. Secondly, there's actually nothing new here from Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. He's reported something similar about every week of, they want to pay him, they want to pay him, blah, blah, blah. Here's my issue. If this report, and I would maybe argue a leak from the Cowboys organization, given the way Fowler phrased his report, what are you waiting for? What's the benefits of waiting for Dallas waiting to do a deal? Like, oh, yeah, he's our guy, we have full faith in him. Why are you waiting then? Didn't we learn the first time there's no benefits to waiting, it only costs more? So they need to be the one to push the market forward. That is their job as a front office. It's to get the players signed to the most team-friendly deal possible. Waiting does not help that get accomplished at all. I've got more thoughts on this, but will the Cowboys get a deal done with Dak Prescott? 1 for yes, 0 for no. Go ahead and sound off for me in the comments section. Here's kind of my final take on this. I think you can make an argument that, the theory of, well, if he was their guy, they'd have paid him by now. And in many cases, I do agree with that. My issue here with this team, with this quarterback, is this is exactly what they did last time. They kept saying, he's our guy, and they waited and didn't get a deal done, and then folded over like a broken lawn chair and gave him everything that he could have wanted. It was one of the best deals a quarterback got in a long time, which only, to an extent, the Cowboys have themselves to blame because they took too long. So if we believe this reporting / leaking, they're doing the exact same thing again. Whatever side you're on of this Dak contract debate, whether you want him paid or you don't want him paid, the process has been bad because a decision could have, should have, and would have been better off having been made by now. Don't want Dak here? You could have worked with him on the no trade clause. Or hell, you just could have cut him. Who cares? At that point, it's a third-round pick you're getting back, and you can't spend in free agency for a year. Does that really move the needle for you? Oh, and if you do want him paid, why are you waiting? Because it's only going to cost you more in the end. Let's talk kick returners here. The Cowboys and special coordinator John Fossil have begun working on new kick return plans. Remember, the rules have changed very drastically, and I am excited to see how it all plays out, specifically during the preseason. But basically, I think you'll see more teams put 2 guys back there for returns. So one of them, obviously, is going to be KaVontae Turpin. No one here is on crazy pills that I know of, Chris. But Turpin is going to be one of them. The other guys getting run at kick returner, at OTAs, the open portion, so there could be a few more guys that get mixed in there. Deuce Vaughn, who was the backup last year, Juanyeh Thomas, and Jalen Cropper. So who should be kick returner number 2 for the Cowboys, opposite KaVontae Turpin? V for Deuce Vaughn, T for Juanyeh Thomas, or C for Jalen Cropper. Kick return stats from 2023. Turpin didn't get very many chances. Pretty good averages when he did. And I think this matters because I would bet that opposing teams are going to try really hard to not kick to Turpin. And given the distances of the kick, you might not be able to do the lineup one. You might have to put them on opposite sides, so you're having to try to scramble and get to the far side. So that we'll see how it plays out, but that might be the thing there. So first up would be Deuce Vaughn. Now, he was the backup last year, didn't get to return a kick because there were no kick returns really previously. 4 punt returns for 19 yards, did bust one off for 11. I kind of get the vibe this team, and it kind of plays into the slot receiver stuff. I think they view Turpin and Vaughn as semi-similar players. Maybe one's more receiver than running back, and then vice versa for Vaughn. But I think they kind of view some similarity in the roles there. The name I liked seeing on that list was Juanyeh Thomas. Now, you might not remember this. Back in 2018, Juanyeh Thomas was Georgia Tech's kick returner with 24 returns, an average of 25.3 yards, and took 2 back for touchdowns, including one against Georgia, by the way. And then he became too important on defense, and they didn't put him back there. Jalen Cropper had something similar happen early in his time at Fresno State. His first 2 years, he was involved on kick returns. Then he was too important on the offense, so he kind of got phased out of that. 14 returns for 297 yards. Nothing massive there, but enough that is certainly worth mentioning. So I think for the preseason, they're going to give a lot of Vaughn, Thomas, and Cropper run there and see who can emerge as option 2. Thomas probably makes this team. We'll see about Deuce Vaughn. It's a big deal for carving out that one of those last spots on the active roster. One note / tease, the Michael Gallup contract is now officially off the books from that post-June 1st designation. That frees up $9.5 million in salary cap space. We will have some free agent targets for the Cowboys for you later this afternoon, so make sure you guys are subscribed.